How can you work with a JSON value if you know nothing about it? Hi, my name is Eric Normand, and these are my thoughts on functional programming. So I wrote this article back in October of 2017, I think it was. Yep, end of October 2017. The article is called Clojure versus the Static Typing World. It was a response to one of Rich Hickey's keynotes, and I talked about my experience with Haskell and working with JSON APIs and how difficult it was to do that from Haskell. You can read the article. I'm not going to go into that here. And I got a lot of readers of this article. I guess it was kind of... it went viral because it kind of had a trolly nature. I think people saw some trolling in it. I wasn't trying to troll. I was just trying to share my experience. But one thing I talked about was how difficult it was to type some JSON APIs, because the people who are producing that JSON are not static typers. You know, you could be doing a JSON API from a system written in Ruby, a system written in JavaScript, a system written in any number of dynamic languages that don't follow the rules that Haskell wants you to follow. And so you could be getting back a JSON that has this really complex structure to it. Right? Like there's rules you have to know that aren't even written down anywhere. Or they're kind of implicit in the documentation, but you have to read between the lines. But mostly you have to get a response, a piece of JSON, and look at it with your human eyes and see what you can do with it. Okay, I'm talking about some values being optional, meaning they're either there or they're not. Some values having different types. So sometimes it'll be a string or a list of strings. So the string will represent the one case. The list of strings is, multiple. And maybe even it's missing because it had 0, right? So that's 3 different types, really. Sometimes the value of one of the key values in there will determine what else will be in there. Okay, so it'll say, well, if we're returning an add response, then you'll see a key for this, and if you're returning a subtract response, you'll see a key called this other thing, right? And so then that one might have a complex type too, that has 3 possible cases in it, and it's all based on the type. And when you look at the combination of all of these things with deeply nested JSON structures, the difficulty of typing that, especially since it's not even well documented, it's just an enormous task. And the fact that it can change all the time, and so you have to deal with the type changing over time, so your client has to change, but you also want to be able to deal with the old JSONs that you got. It's a big task, and I'm not saying it's not possible to type it, but the question is, how much effort is it going to be, and are you going to get it right? And so you're just continuously complicating this type to make it match the actual JSON that you're getting. Okay, that is something just from personal experience that happens. Okay, I did not know how to type these things without spending all my time on them. Okay, you're not dealing with something like the type system is very good when you can apply a lot of rationality to the thing. And you say, well, we're not going to deal with this case because that, if we make this type so complex, it'll be hard to type. So I'm going to keep it simple. And then look, my solution gets simple. What we're talking about is stuff that might even start very simple and easy to type. And over time, the JSON API just gets added to and it changes. And then they go through like a couple of like rushed sprints and the thing gets messy and it's easy. It's like they have some library that makes it easy to deal with in their language, but then it doesn't make it easy to type. There's just all these things going on the other side of the API, on the server side, and you're writing this client that you're not in control of, that don't help when you're trying to type it. Just personal experience. So I found that I would rather just have the raw JSON and be able to write a bunch of if statements, right? And just ignore the parts that I don't care about and just dig into the parts that I do and do my best with them. Okay. Otherwise, I would just be typing all the time. Typing means writing types, modifying types. Okay. So I made this point, and I don't think I made it as clearly as this because I felt like it was kind of tangential. And one of the responses to my post was, okay, well, yes. Let me back up. One of the responses was, well, isn't that what something like maybe is for? Where you can have a missing value, right? The thing is, in JSON, everything can be missing. You don't know what they consider something that is optional. And so do you put a maybe everywhere? It's not like it's not as easy a solution as saying that's what maybe is for. The solution requires modeling this other API and its behavior using the tools you have, and maybe might be one of them, but you have to decide this is something that might be missing. This is something that's always going to be there, and so I'm going to put a maybe here, and I'm going to leave this as an unmaybe type. Like this, that is the hard part. It's not how do I represent something that's missing. That's easy. Okay, but then I get this other thing, and this is a really key point because I'm going to answer the question, but I get this question all the time, and it really speaks to the kind of thinking that I think is what I'm trying to point at is the problem. Okay. Well, let me say this before I get into this. I think static typing is the future. I think it's going to be very important in the future, and we should use as much processing power as we can to guarantee our code is correct. Okay. I like static typing. I'm very happy that I learned Haskell because I learned static typing in a very good environment, supportive environment. And I'm thankful all the time because it helps my Clojure programming. And one day I will use static typing more than I do now. Okay? I like static typing. I want to heal this divide, and so we can talk, right? Because I feel like that we in the Clojure side have something to contribute, and we need to work together. We need to learn more static types, and the static type folks need to learn more of what we're doing in the dynamic type and why we choose dynamic types for some things. Okay? All right. So here's one of the questions that I get a lot that really shows the issue, and I'm going to address it directly. How can you work with a JSON value if you know nothing about it? So I was saying, it's hard to type these JSON values coming from random APIs. And they say, well, how do you even work with something if you don't know anything about it? Here's the answer. I know a lot about it. I just said, I know that this thing might be missing. I know that when this value is this, when this key has this value, I have to look at this other key. But if it has this key, but the problem is that's not easily typable. It's simply not easily typable. I know a lot about it. It's just that the type system that I have in Haskell doesn't let me express those things very well. Okay? That is the issue. And so this question of I know nothing about it, this is the problem, is you see types as all or nothing. That if I can't type it, I know nothing about it. And that's not true. If you can't type it, there might be a ton you know about it. They're just not easily encoded in your type system. Right? And this kind of rhetoric of if you can't type it, then it's not worth anything is not helping you as a static typer. Whoever, I'm addressing the person who asked this directly. This is not helping you. There are things that you know that cannot be expressed in the type system. There are things that are not easily expressible. Or maybe they are expressible, but the type would be 14 pages long. Okay? These are real concerns. And we can't just throw something out. We can't just say, I'm not going to use that API because I can't figure out how to type it. You have to work with it. And this is one of the things I was trying to get at in my article, that Clojure actually provides a model, and that model is simply just give me the JSON, right? Just I'll deal with it. Just I just need to be able to parse it as JSON, and I'll do my best with it. That's really the model that Clojure gives you, and it's also pervasive in the community. Okay, so when another Clojure programmer does something, that's what they do, right? As opposed to in what I noticed, and this could have changed since I've worked in Haskell, but when I was there, my experience was people spent a lot of time writing out these complex types. And that was the answer. I mean, and it's great. It's like they're excited about having a type system now where they can actually express these things. That's what it was. They saw the positive in it. And I mean, this is what I was trying to get at in my article. I think that it's a little ambitious to use the type system to represent an important part of the JSON API ecosystem out there. Some of it's going to be easily typable. So then I continued on saying, like, well, once you have it just in JSON, because JSON is typable, right? It's an ADT, and it has all these cases of it's a string or a number or a null or a Boolean, etc. Once you have it like that, Haskell doesn't make it easy to work with these things, like digging into it and pulling out a value at a certain key path. Now, of course, there's lenses, I know, and those were very, very new when I was working in Haskell, and we did not adopt them in our code base. Just what I've seen is that they could work. I don't know. I don't have enough experience with them. I don't really like the error messages they give you when you've got something wrong, but it seems like in all possibility that they've really solved the problem, and I need to look into them a lot more before I make a judgment on them. But at the time, it was very difficult working with this, because each key path was a maybe, returned a maybe. Each step on the path returned a maybe, and like then you had to deal with this, like, well, what was missing, right? I just get a nothing back. Anyway, it just was not as easy as working in Clojure with this like JSON that I know some stuff about, and I'm just gonna try that stuff on it. So I didn't mean to make any kind of rifts between static and dynamic. It was simply a challenge. It was simply a challenge that, like, Haskell needs to be able to deal with these JSON APIs, and from a language standpoint and also from a community standpoint. And maybe it's even been almost a year since that article came out, and maybe Haskell has even changed since then. I don't know. I should actually go and explore some more, I guess. But please, if you know of, Haskell is better than it was then for this kind of thing, let me know. I'm Eric Normand on Twitter, and you can also email me, eric@lispcast.com. Thank you so much.